Ladies and gentlemen, my watch says pretty much right on 7, and we've got a full hour to hour and a half ahead of us, which is going to demand all of our attention and all of our wits. So let's get started. Before we do, my name is Peter Sipple. I am part of the steering committee that works on setting up these sessions. Margaret and I just figured out we think maybe this is about our 5th year for Living Wisely and Well. Not exactly sure when it got started, but Sharon Grayson was still the rector here, and she helped us, and in fact gave it its name. She's responsible for Living Wisely and Well on planet Earth. We thought that was a really great name. So let me say a few thank yous. First of all, to members of our small steering committee, as Margaret is the chair, Michaela Bracken, Ann Freeman, and Melaine Trukowski are its members, and they are all here, I'm happy to say. There's Melaine, Michaela, where'd you go? There's Michaela and Ann. So we're here, en masse, and we're looking forward to a great evening. I also want to thank Angela Ruggiero for live streaming, not just this evening. She's live streamed, I think, every session we've had for the last about 3 years. So thank you very, very much for doing that. That is really a labor of love. And while I'm thanking, I want to say thank you to the Reverend Tom Blake, who is the rector of this parish here, and also the vestry, for allowing us to use this sanctuary, use this church for not just these evening meetings, but the small committee has met here on many occasions. So thanks very much to the church for, and here's Father Tom right now. You're just getting thanked, sir. So. That's nice. Just say you're welcome. Yeah. Thank you. Would you like to say a greeting? All right, good. But thank you, and we thank the vestry also for letting us have these sessions here. One other announcement, which is Living Wisely and Well, there's an email sign up. If you haven't already done that, so you can stay on our mailing list, there's a clipboard with a sign-up sheet on the back. There's a little table in the back. So. All right, let's move ahead to this evening's most interesting talk. Our speaker is Bruce McCann. Bruce is here we just found out actually that we're next door neighbors.
Yeah.
Which we didn't know. We all live in Guilford on State Street, and we are literally across the street from one another. So Margaret and I have been there 6 years. That shows you what great neighbors we are. We haven't yet met Bruce, but anyway, we're working on it.
Every time I knock, nobody home.
So let me give you a little background on Bruce and what a fascinating background he has. As the project manager of Yale Divinity School's Living Village project, Bruce is responsible for ensuring that the school's multi-million-dollar capital building project adheres to its authorized scope, schedule, and budget. His role provides day-to-day management and leadership with stakeholders and represents the school's interests at meetings with the architect, construction manager, and Yale facilities during the design, procurement, construction, and closeout phases of this amazing project. Other responsibilities include coordinating with YDS, the Yale Divinity School, and its responsibilities during the LBC, Living Building Challenge certification process, about which I'll bet we'll hear more. And website development, donor meetings and presentations, and Bruce provides insight into future community programming opportunities within the Living Village. Previously, our speaker was Director of Capital Planning for the Yale School of Medicine and Yale's West Campus. He was responsible for the planning, design, and implementation of biomedical research, clinical and educational facilities on both campuses. His experience includes leading the School of Medicine capital program during comprehensive campus-wide renovations and the planning and development of new research buildings, support, and cultural facilities at Yale's West Campus. One wonders what he does in his spare time. Bruce came to Yale in 2001 after 10 years of private practice in Canada. He's a member of the American Institute of Architects, Living Future Institute, Ontario Association of Architects, and is an LEED accredited professional. He holds a Bachelor of Environmental Studies and a B.Arch degree from the University of Waterloo in Ontario. Sir, thank you so much for giving us your time this evening and introducing us to this amazing project.
Thank you very much for having me. Can everyone hear all right? No?
No, you're on. I think if it just moved up about 3 more inches, it probably would be, yeah.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah? We good? Okay. So thank you very much for that introduction. Quick little story, but I retired from Yale facilities after 20 years, went to British Columbia for a year with my family to find myself. Didn't happen. 4 months back in Guildford, I worked on our house, and then I didn't know what to do. So I saw an opportunity to work on the Living Village, and having a love of systems and technology. The architecture at the School of Medicine was quite formulaic, laboratories and research facilities, but the systems were what interested me. So when I saw the opportunity, I interviewed and came off the bench for the duration of this project. The project itself is about 50% complete right now in construction, and it is scheduled to be completed in July of 2025 for occupancy in August. It's grad student housing, so typically it would be divinity school students, and I can't wait to show you what we have. So, what is a living building? I have a couple of embedded videos which were coordinated with the School of Architecture.
A living building is really a building that is a positive contributor to its broader ecology throughout every stage of its life. So conventional buildings are responsible for about 37% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And given the fact that we spend about 90% of our time in them, they tend to off-gas a ton of harmful chemicals into our indoor air and also contribute to a growing pollution and waste problem. A living building takes responsibility and account for everything that comes into its DNA and all the efforts that flow out into its environment. It's really exciting to have the Living Village here on campus at Yale because it opens up an opportunity for us to get to understand and learn about our local climate, our flora, our fauna, and in doing so, engage and prototype new ways of living together.
So when I heard that, I mean, I couldn't say it any better. That's exactly what a living building is. And you'll hear more from Mei Ling in a little bit, but she is involved in research at the School of Architecture in ecology and green buildings. The project goals for this building are pretty straightforward. It's a training ground for builders of communities. It's low-cost, affordable housing for divinity students. It demonstrates ecological stewardship, and most importantly, it sets up a new dynamic on campus for an inclusive architecture, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. The Living Building Challenge. So this is, for anyone who knows about the LEED, L-E-E-D, rating system, what I have on the screen here is the Yale standard, which is LEED Gold, Croon Hall, which is Platinum, and the Living Village, which goes even further. And so there are 7 petals, which you'll hear about, and there are 20 imperatives, and there are various levels of certification that you can do for a building. So if you have a building and you're doing an energy retrofit, you might get a green certification, but it goes up and up and up. On the left, self-sufficient for solar, net positive energy and water. The photovoltaic systems we have on the building are actually over 110% now. 105 was the minimum, but I'll describe what we're doing in that regard. Pollution-free. As with any new Yale building, they're all electric. Yale has a plan in their sustainability plan to be all electric, non-combustion by 2050. And so they're thinking about taking the entire Yale microgrid, currently used gas turbines, and doing ground source heat pumps. So we'll see how that works in the longer term, but it's all electric is the way to go, and that's what renewables. Health and well-being. So there's a great connection in this building between the architecture and the landscape. And you'll see when we go through the site plan, there are a number of moments and gathering spaces that leads to the inclusive nature of the building. And regenerative, it gives back to the environment. We manage all our stormwater on site, and we're reusing some of the water. There's a small nuance there, but I'll explain that as well. So here's Mei Ling again. Oop.
So there are 7 main petals that form the core of the Living Building Challenge. The first has to do with place, understanding the climate and impacts that a building may have on its site. The second has to do with the responsible use of energy on site, as well as water. Then there's the use of materials. And here the focus is to eliminate all of these chemicals and materials that are known to be destructive, either in terms of toxicity, energy, or depletion of resources around the world. And lastly, there's a whole slew of really interesting criteria, including happiness and well-being, equity, and this wonderful category called biophilic design. And that really opens up an aspirational aspect of the Living Building Challenge, which is to connect humans with their broader ecology.
So the site, do most of you know the Divinity School location? Yeah. Okay, so the building itself, the existing building is very Jeffersonian. It's exclusive, it has gates on it, and it's not very welcoming the way it sits now. We leave everything open, but at night it's closed up. Also, the ornament is pretty austere on the exterior, and on the interior it's more grandiose. So the idea, that was an existing parking lot that we are putting the living building on. The roadway that you can see running right on the left-hand side of the YDS building used to bisect. Now we're taking that road and going around the back of the building. So the site plan actually forms a much larger open courtyard, reminiscent of other Yale courtyards. And in fact, there was a dimensional study done. This is about, similar to specific courtyards in Yale in terms of scale. Sorry. So when you come up from Prospect Street, we're going to have an orchard, apple, fruit-bearing trees. The entrance court, which has 2 ADA parking spaces, and there'll be parking all along the road, leads into what we refer to as the West Portal. You go underneath the building. There are 3 pieces to the building, but they're all connected on the 2nd and 3rd floors. Community courtyard in the center, which is largely bluestone with surrounding a large green. This is one of my favorite, the community kitchen. So it opens both onto the courtyard and then open onto a very large terrace, which has a beautiful view of East Rock. And on the terrace itself, we have both a trellis, and then we have kitchen gardens. And these are accessible, ADA accessible gardens that can be utilized by the students to grow herbs, vegetables, to reuse within the units themselves as group, or to be part of the community. So that's all part of this. How can the community integrate into the Living Village? And there's another aspect. We have the Living Village, and then we have YDS. It's brand new, it's distinct. How do we integrate the two is an issue we're talking about right now. And who lives there? Why do they live there? How long can they live there? because we have 3 other existing residences which are off the screen up on the right-hand corner, and they are 1950s buildings and have more capacity. So they are in need of work as well. The water commons. So this is another gathering spot where there's a boardwalk over top of the constructed wetland, and the constructed wetland is the last place before the water is reused, and I'll explain the water systems to you. We have an amphitheater. The majority of the outdoor furniture here is large chunks of granite, which are flamed on the top, but their sides are rough, and there are a lot of what we refer to as check dams, which slow the water down and let it percolate into the soil. And then the grove. These are nut-bearing trees, and that forms an allée that you can walk through up to the Living Village Terrace. So this is the layout. The lower level in purple, you see 2 two-bedroom units. We have a large water treatment room. We have a multi-purpose room, electrical, mechanical, of course, laundry facilities, which is in the reuse water, as well as mailroom, things like that. The first floor, you can see the 2 portals in the beige color. There are 9 micro units, and micro units, which I'll show you later, are really, they're referred to at the Divinity School as monastic cells. They have a bathroom, they don't have a kitchen, and we're building in the furniture for them, and I'll show you a diagram of that. All of the furniture that we're building is from the trees that we cut down in order to facilitate the living village. So we're using that for finishes, common furniture, and it was milled locally in New Haven at a mill called City Bench, and it's being built by Hugo and Hobie, which are a local vendor as well who build furniture. So we're very excited about all of this, and the reuse was extremely important. The micros, you can see they're blue on the upper left corner. The greens are studio units, and then upstairs on the 3rd level are 1-bedroom units, and they're sizable. They have very large windows. Each one has an operable window, and they have ceiling fans as well. They also have temperature and humidity control for each room, which is fantastic. So these are the living building petals. Tonight I wanted to talk about a couple of them, which are the most interesting to me. What you see on the right is a description of the LBC certification level. So that's the Living Building Challenge. And so we're going for the outer blue, which is full certification. And this is one of the largest residential buildings, I think, if ever, to be built under that certification. Now, it isn't without its hoops to jump through. But what's nice about it is the fact that LEED is a great system, but it's a check-the-box system. But we have an issue with the living building certification. For example, living building requires you to build a water plant. Well, to us, that doesn't make sense in an urban environment. So we're utilizing potable water from the Whitney Water Plant, which is just up towards Hamden, up Whitney Ave, and it's a LEED Platinum building. In order to get approval to do that, we had to do what's called hand printing. And so we set up a series of water summits, which are meetings with the Regional Water Authority, New Haven Pollution Control Authority, DEEP, and I'm forgetting one, City of New Haven. And so what we're doing is we're researching and advocating and disseminating information in order to bring positive change. Now, we have to show that positive change over the course of the certification year. So it's very serious. We have to do that, and we have an upcoming meeting with RWA tomorrow to talk about land trusts. So part of the requirement is that you offset the acreage that you're developing by a purchase in a land trust, which is, forever. We have carbon offsets, things like that as well. So it's not a simple task. The energy pedal, which is one of the most interesting, is we have two systems. On the building itself, we have photovoltaic shingles. And then we're building a photovoltaic PV array over the east parking lot. And the requirement is that we have at least 5% that we return to the grid. So in summer you return, in winter you draw. That's the way it works. And then the metrics you can calculate at the end of the year.
Battery system?
Pardon me?
You don't have a battery system.
So we don't have a battery system, and the way we got around that was that we, I shouldn't say got around, the way we negotiated that was that we were connected to the Yale grid. And so in the event of an emergency, the Yale grid is backed up by UI. So if the turbines go down, then we switch over to UI. So the battery for this building for 2 weeks would have been the size of a tractor trailer container. And we worked on that as hard as we could not to have it. So we used the Yale grid as the fail-safe for the system. The roof is deliberately splayed in order to maximize the solar efficiency of the building. And then on the other sides, the most northern side will be similar shingles that are not photovoltaic, but they'll be metal. And I don't know if you've seen the shingles before, but they're quite nice. This is a view of the courtyard, a much earlier view, but the reason I'm showing it is that each of the facades in the internal courtyard has sunscreens. They're at different angles for different exposures, but they mitigate the solar heat gain and reduce the mechanical loads on the building. This gives you an example of the lengths we go to. The dean we have the building, or the room on the top is called the Old Refectory. And it's a beautiful room and looks out towards St. Ronan Street. Beautiful valley, beautiful trees. So we wanted to ensure that if we put a canopy there, a photovoltaic, that it wouldn't impede the look. And so we study everything, but what's interesting, and it's hard to read from here, but this canopy that we're putting up will, let me just see. Well, what I'll do is I'll read it here. How smart. It will provide 56% solar energy for the existing residences we have on site, and it is 12% of the campus as well. And so rather than just go to the 105, sending it back, we're probably up 110, 115, returning more to the campus, reducing our carbon footprint, reducing our Yale carbon tax, and that's a significant number. I don't know if everyone knows, but Yale pays carbon offsets in lieu of getting all the electricity up to speed for years. Within the building, and this is where the systems come in, this building is really a machine. Electric, water, temperature, humidity. We're going to have a series of dashboards, and all this data will be collected. And in the east portal, we have a big outdoor 55-inch screen that will be outdoor use, where you can punch through these different scenarios, and it will be on the website as well. So, one wonders whether or not the students will be involved. How can this work? Could building A, building B, and building C, compete to have less energy use, keep their thermostats down? And that's the whole organization of the Living Village. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but we have people working on that right now, committees and students and The water pedal. So I think this has to be my favorite. So we have two 10,000 gallon cisterns, and this is for rainwater capture and condensate from mechanical equipment. It's collected in the cisterns, then it goes through a filtration system, and then it's used for drip and spray irrigation. We also have a water element, which I'll show you, that it will feed. These are the cisterns when they were being put in place. And we actually had an issue with the connections because they settled and they weren't flexible connectors. So we had to repair one of them, and you know, it's a typical construction issue. So now, of course, they all have flexible connectors. But this was a lot of effort. The gray water reuse system. So all the potable water in the building comes from the Whitney Water Plant. And what happens is anything from a kitchen sink, shower, or toilet goes into a closed loop system. And this system goes through about 4 or 5 levels of filtration, including UV, sand filtration. And right now we're putting in the primary treatment tank, which is a very, very large settling tank. And then it continues through the primary treatment tank, through trickling filters, another sand filter, and then into the constructed wetland that will actually be a place to gather. Stormwater. So all of it is managed on site, and what you can see here on the left-hand side, we have a series of large granite check dams, and these check dams slow the water down so it can percolate into the soil rather than run off. And we do have a connection to the storm, and we do have a connection to the sewer should something go wrong, but that's not the way in which we're approaching this. So you can see once again the treatment room in the basement, a reactor tank, sand filter, and constructed wetland. And this building's interesting because it's on the top of the hill. So how you manage the stormwater was a big issue. We had a competition with the School of Architecture, which was a lot of fun. A student competition over a weekend to design the water element. And this is what they came up with. And it was a unanimous choice, by the way, by the jury, including Deborah Burke, the 2 other faculty at the School of Architecture. But this is called Confluence. And, you know, it has the Trinity. It has the confluence or meeting place, which is the water element. And so we're just starting. I had a meeting today with our architects of record to discuss how we move this forward. But it's going to be a learning opportunity for the students. They're going to tell us what they had in mind, including our landscape architects and architect of record. And then from here, we're going to see, they're going to understand, well, you have to have someone to carve it. And you look at these markings on, well, what's the intent of the markings? They look very casual, but they're very specific and deliberate. And, you know, that's part of the beauty of it. The materials pedal. So 90% of the materials in this building are toxin-free, and that's stipulated by the Living Building Challenge. So when you saw the spray insulation that was being put on in the video, we're using cellulose insulation. The walls themselves, it's a very tight building. The walls themselves are a double wall system, R46, which is very, very insulative, and then R64 at the roof. So very tight building, triple glazed windows, Cascadia windows, and we have bird-proof glass on them, and they're argon filled as well. So the materials at SDQ, slate, granite, bluestone, brick. So the modern interpretation was a terracotta, which is a low carbon. We have very little, we have concrete in this building, but in lieu of Portland cement, we used blast furnace slag, which increases the strength of the concrete, but actually reduces the Portland cement by 40%. So it's much less of a carbon sink. The materials palette you can see there, the building itself is largely terracotta. This is the mock-up that a construction manager usually builds to show you how the systems go together. It's also necessary for testing of the windows, for leak testing, air and water testing. You can see on the left-hand side we have profiled terracotta, and that is on the exterior of the U-shaped building. And then on the right-hand side you see the interior, which is a smooth granite with the line. Those are the sunshades on the right, and you can see the large gutter for the collection of water and the solar shingles above. So that's ultimately what the building will look like, the entire building.
What kind of wood?
Pardon me?
What kind of wood?
So it's all Forest Stewardship Council wood, oak, and pine. And a lot of, you'll see, I have a time-lapse video that we can watch that shows you how everything was built off-site, the columns, the beams, the floors, and they were all assembled, the trusses of course, and they were all brought on site and then assembled. And they went up quite quickly. The building was framed, I think, in 3 months, the entire building. So this gives you an indication of what, this is on the second floor. And the flooring is all white oak throughout. The columns are glulam columns. And then the flooring, it shows the gypsum wallboard above, in this case. But each of the units, has an exposed ceiling with cross-laminated timber. This is the monastic cell I was referring to, which has oak flooring, a desk, storage, and a bed. Now, these 9 units we're furnishing, and we're thinking about furnishing the other units as well, which is in discussion right now, because part of the issue is low VOC. If people are bringing in furniture, grad students from elsewhere, what are the implications of that? Because we have to do what they call indoor air quality tests over the certification year, and that IAQ number has to be validated. This is the schedule that I referred to earlier. We actually renovated the lobby of the Divinity School as well. If anyone's been there before, when you came in the front entrance, there was a bookstore on the left, and it was a very small entrance. Well, that's now been renovated, and it's quite nice, quite open, reception area. So that's the occupancy date is August 2025. And then what I wanted to show you is I just took this snip, hopefully it'll work. This is, let's think, so we started in November. This is a year in the life of the build of the Living Village, and I hope you enjoy it. Building C on the right, building B directly ahead, and building A on the left. And if you go to the website, there are actually 3 views, and we're going to have a comprehensive panorama view when the project's finished, which will be a time lapse. You know, it's surprising how much manual labor there is on a site. They have about 80 people on the site now. We're in the rough-in stage for a lot of the buildings. They're becoming enclosed. The C building lagged behind, largely due to weather. If you remember the early part of the year, we had summer, we had a lot of rain. And so you can see them. Now they're going to unwrap that blue package, and those are the floors. And they just crane them into place. It's just a kit. The building's fully sprinklered. And right now what they're doing is, what you see, that blue material is, it's like a Gore-Tex. It breathes, but it's a waterproofing element that's field applied to the building. So there's a lot of technology in this building, which is very interesting. So in terms of biophilia and the building itself, this will give you an idea of ultimately what it will look like. This is walking up from Prospect Street. And what you see in the upper left corner is a student lounge that's called the Lantern, student meeting space. It's called the Lantern Lounge, and one of the final photos, it has it lit at night, so it will be the gateway. This is the entrance court. You can see with the plentiful apple trees by our renderers in the background. Granite benches. The interior of the main entrance is white terracotta, whereas the exterior of the building is the profiled terracotta. This is a view after coming into the courtyard looking towards the community kitchen and the east portal. There's a garden which is on the left by the colonnade. That's called the Grays, and it's going to have blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, and it will be something that people can just help themselves to. So you can see there's a lot of return to the environment. This is a look at the Divinity School. So the north entrance, the northwest entrance will now be the main entrance to the Divinity School. So you'll enter through the court, and then we have a classical, it's a little more classical than that. We worked with the New Haven Preservation Society as well on that. That's the community kitchen opening up onto the courtyard. Another view.
Can you describe the community kitchen?
Pardon me?
The community kitchen, how does that work?
So that's open to anyone at the Divinity School. So you can book it, or you can have community dinners there. Or it's used by people in the building. But the idea is that this becomes an assembly space for the entire school. Yeah.
Cooking facility, but eating.
Yeah, so it's actually, you can see, it's actually a student kitchen. So it has ADA compliant fixtures, it has storage, it has all of the things a kitchen would have, and large tables that are for community use. And in good weather, they can spill out both onto the terrace, which you see in the background, or out onto the community courtyard.
Bruce, by way of population, am I right that YDS enrolls about 350 students?
Yes,
And that these new residents will house about 50?
yes,
Correct about that?
yeah.
So there'll be 300, most of whom will be non-residents.
So there are 120 beds at Bellamy, Fisher, and Curtis. So that would be, somewhere in the neighborhood of 170, so half the student population. I mean, the majority of people, as far as I understand, at the Divinity School, after they live there 1 year, they go out into the community. So, I mean, the idea, the dean's idea is that this becomes a training ground. So if you live here, they teach each other how to be sustainable and how to live wisely and well. I mean, that's the idea. And then they go out into the community, they have congregations, and they lead.
So the old residence halls in the 1950s, affectionately known as the Fertile Crescent, they're still in use?
Yes, they are.
And did you say there's about 100 students who will live?
Yeah, about 120 live there,
Okay.
as far as I know. But yeah. And this is the view towards East Rock and the community gardens. kitchen gardens here. And if everyone remembers the Divinity Farm, which is across the road, the east driveway, we're still trying to figure out what that looks like because it's a student-owned facility. They run it, and we're trying to somehow integrate it into the community as part of the Living Village. This is a view of the constructed wetland on the left and what we call the water commons. And then the amphitheater is up on the right hand side as well.
So is that planted up with a rain garden?
So it will be literally a wetland. Was that your question about the?
If it was going to be planted up as if it to function as a rain garden?
Yes, yeah, yeah. And each of those areas where the swales are, and the check dams also. So this is an area of check dam in that bottom left. And this is a view walking towards the Divinity School with the amphitheater. I should say that we, other than the water element, we also are doing an Indigenous acknowledgement, what's referred to as a memory pile. And if you've been to the Peabody Museum, they have one outside near the Torosaurus. We're working with two artists, one from Maine and one from Long Island, to design it. And it will be somewhere in this neighborhood, which is exciting. This is a view from the Grove, looking up at the
How many
Divinity
years
School.
from now will it look like this?
I would say 12 to 15. Yeah. I mean, we have it's interesting. We have everything except the lawn, we have a 5-year guarantee. So if it fails within 5 years, I'm not sure if I mentioned because I've been on a number of tours today, but they're removing 3 feet of soil, native soil, and they're bringing in engineered soil, which have different consistencies and permeabilities, and there's a lot of piping underneath to collect water and bring it back to the cisterns. So it's fascinating from a systems point of view, and that's what led me to come here. And this is a view of the lantern looking west, and it has this is a nice little touch, but it has a completely lit ceiling, which is made of fabric. It's beautiful material, soft light, dimmable. And then this is the lantern at night. So that's the presentation, and hopefully it's not too detailed, but that's the way the building is. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
If you would like to ask a question of Bruce, we have this microphone, which will help not only the rest of us to hear, but also upstairs. So, are there questions? Yes, surely. There you go. Speak right into the middle of it. Yep.
With all the trees and, oh yeah, I always forget that, thank you. Are you planting native trees and native plants for the pollinators and everything?
Yes.
And I noticed that you used the term biophilic, which was cool. And therefore, when students look out the windows, they will see trees, which, as you probably know, drops your blood pressure and stress response.
does, yeah.
It's truly amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
That's exactly right. And they are all native. And in fact, at the memory pile, they want to use medicinal native plants, meaning what could they use? They also currently want to have quahog shells around it. And we're
Really?
trying to figure out how that works. But yes, the biophilia, you always have a view to nature. And that's the intent of the building.
That's great.
And you can experience nature. And there's so many, when I first arrived, I looked at the building and I thought, my gosh, look at all the different things that are here. And it took me a while to actually blend them all together because they looked so independent. An amphitheater here, water common there. But it turns out after you visit the site, and after you walk around, it does make a lot of sense, and they do integrate together around the common theme of sustainability, biophilia, water, and electric.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm not familiar with the concept of a water element. Can you explain what that is?
Oh, so it used to be called water feature, and then we changed it when we were working with the School of Architecture. It's really just a, what it is in the courtyard, it's to remind you that the water is actually part of the equation. We had a much larger pool that you could actually walk through, but that was deemed inappropriate. It'd be great for kids, but not necessarily for people with visual impairment. So it's to celebrate the water and to celebrate the use of the water as a precious resource. And it's a sculpture. In the competition, we had 16 entries, and some of them were wild. This was one of the most sedate. Others were extremely three-dimensional. The confluence one that we looked at, how is it lit? We don't know, but it's a remembrance of water before you go look at the water commons or head down to that constructed wetland.
Bruce, thank you. This is just so fascinating. 15 years ago, I had a chance daily to document, just as a volunteer photographer, the site prep, the construction, everything of Croon Hall, which is the platinum building that the School of the Environment is located in. One local question, where's the granite coming from for the seats? Bob Barnett? So where's the granite coming from?
Pennsylvania.
Okay. Not Stony Creek.
No.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to check with is, I wrote an article about the iron workers and all the people who built Croon Hall, and you mentioned about 80 people on site. I wonder if anybody has or will be able to maybe interview those people about what they're feeling about what they're building, because I'll tell you, some of those iron workers went home and were so proud of the building that they were working on. It was so unusual from anything they'd ever been. And I'm just curious if anybody knows what the builders think.
So we are doing that. And there are a number of, if you watch the website or go to the website every so often, or the Divinity School media, we do have interviews with the construction manager. Shamit is the construction manager. And the lead superintendent, who's doing a great job. So we are doing that. Yeah, that's part of the plan. Greg, the dean, is interested in video and book about the building. And I went to at Hampshire College, they have what's called the Kern Center, and it's a living building as well. And the lead construction person on the job wrote a book about it, and it's just a pamphlet book, but it's beautiful, describing start to finish and what it meant to them. So we are considering that.
There are questions from live streamers. Is all the pavement permeable? Seems like more pavement than needed. Why so much? So
the roadway that you see is all permeable asphalt. The bluestone is not, but once again, we're collecting the water underneath, so it's permeable. They sit on pedestals, the pavers, collecting the water below and reusing it.
Okay. Question number 2 from a live streamer. Can you please describe the constructed wetlands and how is this within the definition of a wetland? What are the characteristics to know for this?
What are the characteristics of it? So it's partially sand, and the plants themselves are included in our landscape package. Do I know what type they are? No. I can't describe what they are, but it's similar to a bioswale, but I can't describe them specifically.
Okay. And a question on the glass. Is it imprinted in some way that helps to minimize bird strikes?
Just the glass is the best opportunity we have for bird strike.
So nothing in the glass to help minimize bird strikes?
Yeah, so that's all we can do. It's not a very large or high building. It's not like the School of Management building, which is all glass. It's really 2.5 stories. But what we've done is we've used bird frit on the glazing, and that's, I think the best we can do at this point.
What is bird frit?
It's little dots that are on the glass. You could see it on one of the mock-up photos, but yeah, a human can see it, birds can really see it, but it's little dots that are opaque. They're...
That deters birds?
Yes.
Okay. Can you put it on the School of Management building?
So they've been working on that for quite a long time.
Huh?
They've been working on that for quite a long time to stop the bird strikes there, and my suspicion is that they've solved it.
Good.
So thinking about, future application for this concept, how would the cost of construction be a factor? So is this a lot more expensive to build, somewhat more expensive to build, or not?
Okay, so this is an experiment.
Right.
This building. It's high performance, so it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 35% more expensive than a LEED gold building. But having said that, I became a LEED accredited professional in the year 2000, and I couldn't get one of my clients to buy in. Oh, it's too expensive. It'll never happen. Well, 24 years later, it's the standard. So my prediction is that 20 years, or hopefully sooner, the Living Building Challenge will be there, and it's malleable. It can change. And as you know, if you use more products, the price of the products come down. And so that's the goal, but it takes time.
And it's more energy efficient too, isn't it?
Yeah, much more innovative.
So you're going to see some savings in energy costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this building, in my opinion, it needs to prove itself.
Right.
It needs to be built, it needs to operate, and 5 years from now, we'll find out what it did, or how it's doing. So that's the way I look at it. But I do think it's an experiment. There aren't that many living buildings around the world when you look at the number of buildings that are built, but they all have attributes that are moving in the right direction.
And finally, could bits and pieces of this technology be used in the interim without going for the full model?
Yeah.
So could you use, the water feature, collecting water, having a reservoir and all that, as you move towards the ultimate goal of having this more widely accepted and widely utilized, in homes and in facilities, public facilities and things like that. As you move towards that goal, could you be applying certain of these technologies that would begin to prove themselves?
Yes, yeah. And I heard something on NPR that solar panels, when they end their useful life, now we're having to stockpile them because they're so intricate that we haven't had someone who can actually take them apart and reuse the materials, even though the materials are valuable. So, that's an issue. Every time we turn around, there's an issue. We're using PVC pipe here. Well, 5 years from now, is something going to come out about PVC? There's just, you never know what's going to happen. We installed an iron filter, a location for an iron filter, because one of the issues is that cast pipe, a living building out in Portland, or Seattle, Portland, they tested the water and it had high levels of iron. And so they installed an iron filter. Well, we took a preemptive to build it in. So there's always something. Hi.
So I'm curious about the notion that the students in Building A might compete with the students in Building C to see who can use the least amount of energy over a certain period of time. Are you familiar with the Kohler Center at Rosemary Hall?
No, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, well, that was their premise to begin with. Students live in this laboratory, they work in the laboratory, I mean, they do experiments. These are high school kids, I mean, they're not graduate students, but that was part of the notion. And I think what you said about the displays are key to all of this for anyone in a building, because it's the behavior of the people in the building that have as much impact as all the technology that goes into it. So if people remember to close their windows at night or turn off the lights or do whatever, it'll be apparent in the readouts that they can see on their way in or out of the building. The Kohler Center, I haven't gone back and tried to see whether that is a functioning premise that if you have a competition, well, one is going to win out over the other. So is there something apart from the operation of the building that will encourage people to take that on for themselves?
Yeah, so there's, so the operations we've talked about, but the community we really haven't spoken about. So part of this, this project relates to the development of an eco-theological program at the Divinity School. And so surrounding this right now, the plan is to have conferences, visiting lecturers, all based on ecosystems and the world in which we live right now. So there are community groups, there are relationships that can be developed within New Haven, within the state, that will bring people to this place. And one would hope that the students would be part of teams that would actually contribute to the building, contribute to the gardens, invite the public to come, because we don't have any gates. It's open. It's all open for business. And that's where this lies. So the students have to, they may have responsibilities, but we're still thinking about that. And when I say we, I'm talking about faculty, staff, and student committees, because I'm not, I have my own view, but I think a little competition and a little teamwork and responsibilities are good, even for a busy person. So, and it's community building. And that's the goal of the project itself, to build.
One more from our live stream viewers. Will there be outdoor lighting? And if so, will it be turned down during bird migration?
So, so that's an interesting question. And the reason I say that is because we've had this issue at the Divinity School before. And I think the lights have been turned down. The lighting is very, what's the word? Sedate. It's solar powered lighting, all of it. And it's not overly bright. And literally throughout the landscape, it's lit with large solar poles. But the building itself, will they be turned down at night? It doesn't have a lot of exterior lighting, only the windows. It's all facing down. Yeah.
Anything more? Yes. Speak right into the center of it.
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that this is an experiment. What is your outcome measures? What are your efficacy measures? How will you decide in the end of the day how much of a success this was?
So it would be based on the metrics of the building. So it would be water use, water reuse. It would be electric and how we're doing in power generation versus consumption. It would be whether or not our philosophy about the building works as well. Largely whether or not it's worked. But definitely the metrics are based on energy use, water use, temperature and humidity, and the amount of electricity.
How about input from the residents?
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't, there's been a fair amount of excitement about the building, but whether or not the residents learn and understand what the building's about will be part of the goal. The plan is to have a building director who will oversee the building, and one would assume they'd be a horticulturalist as well.
Questions? Anyone else? Yes.
Hi.
Oh, it's okay. I think I'm live.
Oh, you can.
Hi.
Speak right into the mic, please.
Okay, hi. I'm Healthy's a nonprofit and a sustainable grower, and I was wondering, are you connecting at all with Marsh Botanical Gardens, and do you have a program for therapeutic, like horticultural therapy, therapeutic gardening, and what are you doing with them and their science department? Anything with their science departments? Because I know Marsh is with the science department.
Right.
And do you know what their future is looking like?
So, great question.
Good question.
So there's a lot to do with this building, and the Divinity Farm, the Yale Farm, the West Campus Farm, we've talked about all of those and how they integrate together and what the relationships are between them, and the Living Village Gardens. So we're working on it, but we still don't have a clear idea of how everything functions and what the relationships are. I mean, the idea of a therapy program, a lot of students who actually use the farm themselves use it for therapy.
Yeah, or a pastoral,
Yeah.
Counseling, therapeutic type of program.
Yeah. So it's a great idea. We just we're not there yet. Still have to do it. But thank you for the question, the idea.
Anyone else? I guess I have partly a question and sort of a comment, but could you say a bit more about why this ended up at the Divinity School of all places? It seems to me that this is something that the School of Architecture could have come up with, or certainly the School of the Environment, but why is it at the Divinity School?
So largely, it's at the Divinity School because we feel that religion plays a large part in the ability, is more important these days in terms of climate change. The idea that people would come here and learn and continue out into communities and spread the word of sustainability, learn to live a sustainable life, is what the idea was behind the building. That's really the ethos. Equity, justice. The Living Building Challenge is about that as well, and so is the Divinity School. And those are the main reasons why it was done. It's to try and turn the ship slightly and to make people more aware of what they're actually doing. I brought a plastic bottle today, and I thought to myself, oh, you got to get yourself a Yeti, because it just goes on. And at the Divinity School, we're also talking about sustainable events, because if you at commencement, there's bottles everywhere, and people don't know which bin to throw things in. It's that simple, and there isn't an education, there isn't appropriate signage, which is a problem. And so we're starting it ground up, both at the Divinity School and with the Living Village. We're trying to be more aware of what we're doing and how we're going to continue on.
Thank you, Bruce. What a great presentation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's great.
Thank you.
Your great answer to that reminds me that we probably shouldn't end the evening without mentioning at least the name of the dean, Gregory Sterling, whose dream and vision this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. I remember when I first met him hearing about this, and that was about 5 years ago, and it was still in the dream stage, but he's one amazing guy, and he's raised a huge amount of money to make this possible. So he deserves great credit, and I think not only this Divinity School, but Yale as a whole will be far better off for what's going on here with sustainable construction. So thank you very much.
Yes,
Great.
thank you very much.
Father Tom has just a moment. He'd like to talk with us.
Yes, sir. Peter had done such a great job of welcoming everyone. I didn't have many words to add at the beginning, but I do want to close this out tonight. It is a great privilege to host this here at Trinity, this series, and I want to thank Mr. McCann, and I want to thank all of our presenters for these past few weeks, and I want to thank Margaret and Peter and everybody who was a part of this, putting this together. Clearly, it takes a lot of work to do this, and it is such a great service to all of us here and those who are joining us by live stream, and to the community, and we've learned so much. So thank you to both of you and to all who were involved.
All right. I can't tell you much about the future because it isn't formed yet, except for the fact that it's quite likely, it seems, that our little group has been very involved with creating Earth Day over the last 4 years, I think 4, in April. And it's looking possible, may I even mention this, Anne, that we may combine this year in May, a little bit late for Earth Day, and put on something along with the Garden Club. So we're talking about that with our respective boards, and hope that might happen. But it's a joy for us to do the work that we've been doing over the last few years, and thank you for being our recipients of these efforts and for coming to hear these presentations. And thanks again to you for coming tonight, Bruce. Yep.